Hello, my name is AIMAN ABDULLAH, and this is a news update, which is not something that you see very often because admittedly we're not very consistent with this, but we are back for a very important reason, because we're going to talk about fuel. Now, as I'm sure you know, global crude oil prices have been going through the bloody roof, which is why currently RON 97 is being sold in excess of 4 ringgit 30 cent a litre. Now, mercifully, however, RON 95 has remained very stable at 2 ringgit and 5 cent because that is a ceiling price set by the government, meaning that whenever the price of RON 95 goes up any further than that, the government subsidizes the cost. Now, it's been in the news recently that the government is looking to remove the current blanket subsidy system for RON 95 in order to save the government money. Now, because global oil prices are on the rise, apparently the current system is unsustainable, according to both Minister Datuk Seri Mustafa Muhammad as well as Finance Minister Tengku Zafrul. According to them, for every $1 increase in global crude oil prices, it results in a 410 million ringgit addition to the cost of petrol subsidies here in Malaysia. Now, the replacement to the current system, apparently, because we don't have any real understanding of what is to come, but what is being bandied about is a targeted system to allow for these subsidies to go specifically to those who need it and not to those who don't. Now, according to our finance minister, he was quoted as saying that for every 1 ringgit of subsidy that the government pays out, only 15 cent go to the bottom 40% of income earners, whereas 53%, they claim, goes to the top 20% of income earners. Now, I'm not sure where they got this data because naturally the government isn't exactly forthcoming with this sort of thing, but let's just assume for the sake of this argument that it's true. Now, it is certainly laudable that the government wants a way to funnel the subsidies in a more targeted fashion, specifically to those who need it. Admittedly, those who do earn in the higher income bracket in this country most certainly abuse the subsidized fuel system here. Now, we're very glad that a lot of our colleagues within this industry don't do that. A lot of their luxury, high-powered vehicles run almost exclusively on RON 97 and or RON 100. But, of course, we are not representative of the masses, which means that, yes, the system is being abused and there needs to be a way to replace this. However, the way the government wants to go about it isn't exactly the most intelligent manner. Fuel, naturally, is a very important thing for Malaysians, what with 600,000 odd new cars that ply our roads every year. So coming at this means that it is certainly a very sensitive and hot topic issue for a lot of people, which is why we're here to talk to you about it. The problem is, while I understand the need to reduce the cost or cost burden on the government in order to continue to subsidize RON 95, the way they want to go about it isn't exactly very intelligent. Let me give you an example for it, just for the sake of argument. Let's say that the government says that subsidized fuel can only be accessed by individuals who make less than 4,000 ringgit a month. Now, in this example, let's say that individual A makes 4,500 ringgit and therefore he is not entitled to subsidized fuel, and individual B makes 3,500 ringgit and therefore he is entitled to subsidized fuel. Now, for starters, when individual A had a raise that took him from 3,999 ringgit to his current salary of 4,500 ringgit, his cost of living just went up massively, which means whatever car he was driving before is suddenly now a lot more expensive to run simply because he can no longer buy subsidized fuel. That's issue number one. Number two, what is going to stop individual A, who earns 4,500 ringgit, from lending his car to individual B, who is entitled to subsidy and can then go and refuel the car? It's not like people are going to start showing up at petrol stations with the ownership grants now, are they? Now, in the second example, let's say that the government says that it's based on household income. So for every household that makes in excess of 10,000 ringgit, the members of that household are no longer entitled to subsidies. Now, given the fact that Malaysian families can be quite large, if there are 5 individuals in the household, which is now very possible given the fact that out of control property prices in Malaysia means that Malaysian youths are spending more and more time living with their parents, if you just have 5 people living in one household earning an average of 2,000 ringgit each, they're not entitled to subsidy. These are individuals who have otherwise been categorized within the B40 given the fact that their incomes are relatively meager. This also doesn't make sense. Now, we'll give you another example. Let's say you have 2 parents who earn together in excess of 10,000 ringgit. However, they have 2 college-going children who live with them. Now, obviously, these college-going children do not earn an income because they are students. But suddenly, the cars that they drive are now not eligible for fuel subsidies either, simply because their two parents who earn in excess of 10,000 ringgit have pushed them beyond that bracket. This, of course, doesn't help by the fact that these parents who may earn a combined 12 or 15,000 ringgit could be paying for these children to go to a private college, which means that a lot of their income isn't exactly disposable at this point either. Again, this just goes to show that this system might not work. Now, we'll give you another example. Let's say you have one household that earns, say, 11 to 12,000 ringgit between them. They have 3 or 4 children within this one sort of middle income household. Then you have a neighbor where in their household you have a handful of youths who have come usually from out of town. They share one house between the 5 or 6 of them. They earn meager amounts of money doing entry-level jobs, as many people do at that age. What is going to stop that neighbor from asking his neighbor to refuel his car on his behalf because they're entitled to subsidy and they're not? Now let's focus on those youths living in that house for a second. Let's say in addition to their jobs as dispatch riders or data entry clerks or meager administrators, for example, let's say in addition to that they are also Grab delivery riders or Deliveroo document delivery riders. What's going to happen when these individuals suddenly no longer have access to subsidy? Do the cost of these things suddenly go up? That will have a huge chain reaction on all sorts of other things. But again, we're getting stuck on the household income system. What if we go with a quota system instead? So let's say if you earn less than 3,000 ringgit, you're entitled to, say, 40 litres of subsidized fuel every month. 40 litres, as I'm sure many of you would have been able to figure out, is enough for most people to fuel something like a Prodo Myvi or even a motorcycle, for example, for about a month, assuming that you just drive back and forth from work and never go anywhere else. This is going to have a twofold effect. One, people are not going to be using their cars to travel out of town anymore, which might have a dent on the tourism industry. Secondly, if I want to drive my car out of town and I've run out of my 40 litres, then I'm screwed. Suddenly the cost of my holiday has just gone up. Or worse still, what if in a month I only utilize 20 litres of my 40 litre quota, but next month I want to go on holiday? But next month I'm only entitled to another 40 litres, which means I have 20 litres, it doesn't roll over to next month. Then what do I do? This is going to lead to irresponsible individuals storing fuel in improper storage canisters and so on and keeping them at home. This will then increase to a risk of fire within homes because, as we know, Malaysians can be very irresponsible when it comes to the storage of fuel. I don't know how many times I have personally seen people putting petrol into water bottles, for example, simply because they don't have a fuel canister, which admittedly is not something that most of us own, and they are maybe unaware that you can usually rent one from petrol stations in event of an emergency. This, of course, will lead to huge fire hazards at home, which may damage more than one home in the process of it burning down. Then, of course, if we go back to unscrupulous individuals, what if someone who is entitled to 40 litres a month because that's their income bracket, what if they only own a bike and only use 10 litres? What is going to stop them from selling the excess 30 litres to their neighbour for a little bit more than what they paid for it? There will be scalpers and people will profit from this, as we've seen with the touch and go NFC cards, where people bought them at 10 ringgit a pop and now selling them for 50, 60 ringgit online. Malaysians are opportunistic individuals. Unfortunately, as much as we would like to believe we are a first world country, we are plagued by third world mentalities. This is evident by people who double park, for example, or misuse OKU facilities and so on. This targeted system means that these unscrupulous individuals will be given yet another opportunity to profit on the back of government subsidy. Worst of all is if we talk about the economic results of this fuel subsidy repeal. Unfortunately, RON 95 powers a lot of this country. Every single dispatch rider, every single Grab driver, every single Grab rider and so on relies on the price of RON 95 in order to get their services the way they go. If suddenly Grab prices surge by another 150% higher than what we've already seen before, there are going to be fewer people taking Grabs because they'll go back to buying cars or they'll take public transport, which is a good thing, but that's another conversation. which means that there will be fewer opportunities for Grab drivers to earn money, there will be fewer opportunities for Grab riders to deliver food, and on top of that, the dispatch riders with which our entire economy runs in order to get documents from one point or another will suddenly have to charge their clients exorbitant amounts of money simply to cover their fuel costs. This is not sustainable. On top of that, there is the political ramification, which is the fact that literally any political party in this country that promises to bring the blanket subsidy back will immediately get shooed into office. It doesn't matter what their political ideals are, it doesn't matter what their policies are, it doesn't matter what their history is. Whoever brings back the fuel will win. So, I think that pretty much covers everything. The fact of the matter is, yes, the subsidy system that we have in place is flawed. Yes, it does tend to benefit those who have far too much money and really shouldn't be using subsidized services anyway. But as we've seen, T20 individuals still send their children to UiTM. We cannot stop all Singaporeans from refueling on RON 95. So what the hell makes you think that we know how to get targeted fuel subsidies to the people that need them? Do we now have to start carrying around our car grants to the petrol station? Will petrol station operators suddenly have access to the national ID database just to make sure whether or not you're capable? And worst of all of this be based on LHDN records, which we all know only get updated once every 15,000 years or so? Your guess is as good as mine. All I know is if we go down this path, the results will be disastrous, and ultimately we'll be the one footing the bill.